Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting, the Finance Committee. Tonight's February 10th, 2025. And this is the next scheduled meeting of the fiscal year 2026 budget planning process. Tonight, we'll be looking at the facilities proposed budget, transportation proposed budget, revenue and debt service proposed. Take a little time to review any of our previous presentations and time for discussion if needed. We'll get I think we're going to review the language that Evan put together for the FY24 and FY25 warrant adjustments that we discussed last week, and then we'll have public comment. So without further ado, I guess we will get rolling and I'll hand it off to Sean for facilities.
Yeah, good. All right. Thank you very much. I have packets here. Apologize, I did not three-hole punch them. Thank you. Yep, that's correct. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, thank you guys. We're going to review MSAD 75 facilities operations budget. And I'm just gonna get right into it. So let's see. Maybe. Okay, here we go. So give you our mission statement. MSAD 75 facilities team takes pride in working to create a safe and healthy atmosphere, foster learning and community to maintain all facilities to the best possible operational standards, improve building efficiencies, complete thorough long-range planning and capital improvements, and minimize disruptions and interruptions to the learning process. What you'll see here is just a general overview of our buildings, total square footage, and total acreage. I'd like to just show that quick glance to you folks and anybody that might be watching, just to get an idea of what we're trying to maintain and operate here at the district. So, department staffing overview. Total department of 29.7. We have one part-timer that can, or sorry, two part-timers that make up that 0.7. This total number includes the proposed mechanic that we came in front of the board with a few weeks ago. We have not got that job description out or posting out yet, but we're working on doing so. So we hope to staff that in the near future. So department size of 29.7. So I'm going to just give a quick glimpse of each building that we have. We don't need to go into any detail on these, but I like to just show these general overviews because it gives you a general idea of the square footage, the year of construction, and then everything associated on this page is basically tied to a maintenance contract or service contract of some sort. So it just gives you a general idea of public-private water systems, general electricity provider, and then, associated equipment that requires annual service contracts and/or maintenance. And then on the bottom, it gives you a general overview of staffing and how we deal with particular services such as electrical, plumbing, HVAC, general building maintenance, custodial, and service contracts. So I'm not going to go into any detail, but I'm going to flip through these, and it's something that we can refer back to if anybody has a specific question. Certainly feel free to ask. But Bowdoin Central is 37,500 square feet. It was built in 2002. Bowdoin Community School, 33,000 square feet. Original construction 1955, an addition in 1976, an addition in 1992. Interesting spread of construction dates. But that's an oldie in the center portion of that building, which we found earlier this year. Needed some attention in 1955, that was. Harpswell Community School, 29,000 square feet. Original portion of this building was 1956, an addition in 86, an addition in 95. Mount Arrett High School, 2020, our newest building, 154,000 square feet. Mount Arrett Middle School, 130,000 square feet, built in 2001. We have Superintendent's Office, 1950. 14,555 square feet. It's an oldie, but in pretty good shape, actually. Great age. Williams Cone School, 41,000 square feet. Original construction, 1954. An addition in 1959, addition in 1964, addition in 66. And then they connected the two buildings in 97 with the connector and a small renovation in the center of the building. Woodside Elementary School, 68,000 square feet, our largest elementary school, and built in 1991. So the first thing I'm going to go over is the maintenance and service contracts. So reoccurring service contracts are services needed to provide safe operations of building systems and programs. Many reoccurring services are governed by state and federal codes and standards, while others are an investment in maintaining assets. So this is just a general review of all the things that are covered under a maintenance and service contracts: fire alarms, HVAC systems, trash removal, recycling, plowing, roof services, stormwater management systems, fire hydrants. FY25, we budgeted $542,650 on all those service contracts and reoccurring maintenance contracts associated with all those items. FY26 proposed is $559,062. That covers a wide array of equipment, and it's a sizable number. The next thing maintenance. Maintenance and repairs is another large budget line. Maintenance and repairs or reactive maintenance to restore something due to normal wear and tear or excessive use. You see daily foot traffic throughout our facilities of an estimated 3,000 people, not including visitors for events and evening activities. Those 3,000 people function programming in roughly 500,000 square feet of buildings. It's a lot of traffic in a day. So repairs and maintenance covers all these things: plumbing repairs, electrical repairs, HVAC refrigeration repairs, roofing repairs, flooring repairs, anything on there it's covered under our repair budget. Our repairs and maintenance in FY25 was $200,000, and we're proposing an increase of about $8,000 of that line for 2026. Noteworthy proposed budget increases. So we're looking to increase our securities contracted services district-wide account. This year's goal is to begin replacing outdated camera systems across the district. Many of our schools operate old DVR camera technology. The goal for these funds is to begin replacing and upgrading surveillance systems district-wide. Some of last year's securities improvements came out of the IT budget, as well as this line. This line mostly covered the Centegix installation, and we were able to identify some other funding to help with the access control. But we've determined that security improvements should be covered under the facilities budget, and that's why we're proposing an increase to this fund for next year. A goal of ours over the next few months is to create a kind of a 5-year spread of facilities, safety, and security updates that are needed across the district, similar to what I do for our capital improvement plan. We want to be able to show that, what the needs are over the next 5 years, so that people see that, can expect it coming down the road. Capital construction contracts district-wide is another one that we've went into detail with a few weeks ago. The increased funds are due to the end-of-life building components such as roofs, fire alarms, HVAC equipment. And I did note a detailed capital construction breakdown was previously presented on January 28th, I believe. And we're looking at a $200,000 increase there for a proposed FY26. Any questions on that? Okay. I'm going to give a quick rundown on utilities. So utilities covers electricity, natural gas, propane, heating oil, water, and sewer. FY25, we budgeted $779,357. We're looking to do a minimal increase to this. We're looking to keep this kind of flat, but we did see one increased cost due to water and sewer at Bowdoin Central School, I believe. So we did bump this line up slightly to cover that cost. And we're also beginning to look at some programs for potential savings, such as on-site solar. We're looking to bid our propane potentially through main power options this year. And then I started looking into natural gas procurement programs, which I was really interested in, but what I'm coming to find out is that this would require some added equipment called telemeters on every single master meter in order for a natural gas supplier to be able to monitor and bid that gas accordingly. So it looks like an initial cost would be about $3,000 per school to install those telemeters. So I don't know yet if this would be a cost-effective option or not, but we'll continue to look into that. Just to see.
Which schools could
Natural gas.
get natural gas?
We have natural gas at many of the schools. So the high school, the middle school, both Woodside and Williams Cone, as well as Bowdoin Central. So 5 of the schools, including the district office, runs on natural gas, as well as the center. So the only 2 schools that don't use natural gas is Harpswell and Bowdoin Ham. So it might be worth it in the long run. I think we kind of need to do a projection to see what the payback on those telemeters might be, and what the cost of a decathermic natural gas is under a procurement program versus buying it wholesale market value. So we need to look at that a bit more in detail to see if that's worthwhile. We're currently locked into an electricity supply agreement through 2027. We signed in, I want to say, last year with Constellation Energy, and we got a rate of basically 11 cents, which is a really good rate. So we're happy we're in that contract for a few years, and we'll renegotiate that when time comes. Yeah.
I was just, curious, when it comes time to renegotiate, which won't be for next year's budget process, but for the year after, at what point, I'm sorry, my voice seems very loud. At what point do you think you might start getting preliminary pricing information, just thinking ahead, like if for a November renewal would be?
November renewal. So the thing with the electricity supply agreements is sometimes we can negotiate that like a year and a half in advance. And there's also sometimes options to just extend our initial contract and add potentially like 2 years onto it.
Great.
So I would say in 2026, we should have a good idea, once we're into 26, we should have a good idea what we're looking at.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome. So we're excited to look into the on-site solar. I think it seems like an exciting opportunity. We've invited Revision Energy to our next facilities committee meeting, so we're excited to hear what they have to say. I put together a roof portfolio for them to identify any roofs that could potentially accept solar. And when I say potentially accept solar, I mean newer roof systems that won't need to be replaced in the near future. So we obviously don't want to put panels on a roof that needs to be replaced in 5 years. We need to, these panels and lease programs are about a 20-year program. So we want to make sure that we have at least 20 years of roof life left before we put panels on top of that roof structure. So, but I'm excited to see what comes of that. Any other questions?
I have,
Oh, yep,
sorry.
sure, go, yeah, go ahead.
The solar piece now. I'll let you
Next
go to,
slide, yeah.
yeah, you go to that. I'll ask my question at the end. Sorry, I thought you were
Okay,
done
yeah.
with that and I was gonna back up a little bit.
Yep. So this is a general review of the MTA Solar program that we're operating here at the high school right now. There's a lot of details on this, but I guess I'll go backwards and jump right to the bottom here. So you see that bottom box, you'll see total electricity cost without solar. So this is if we didn't have any of those solar panels, we'd be paying $233,130 for electricity here at the high school. Next line there is total electricity cost paid, which includes the lease payment. So we have to lease these panels from a third party leaseor. And so including what we paid for electricity and the lease, that total dollar amount is $178,489. So we get about a total energy savings here at the high school of about $54,000. And that's this year. That cost fluctuates a little bit over the years, depending on the NEB rates that are designated by the state, as well as the cost to the lessor. So on that top column, you'll see a spread of about 6 years. Yes, you see about a spread of 6 years and then a projected for 2025. The NEB rates goes on a calendar year, so it's December to December. So you can see there's a fluctuation in that NEB rate. It's again designated by the state of Maine and their energy procurement process every year. This year, 2024, so we're in fiscal year 25, but they go by calendar year. So I'm going to consider our last year, the 2024. So they only give a 17 cent NEB rate, when next year, as of December 25, they're offering a 20 cent NEB rate. So if you follow that all the way over to the very right-hand side, that's why you'll see a fluctuation in the dollar amounts on the net savings and solar credits, because there's a fluctuation in that NEB rate. And there's also a little fluctuation and continued increase in the cost per kilowatt hour to the leaseor. And that continues to increase over the years. And we know what that cost is. That's a fixed rate for the 20-year lease. And then if you jump into that middle box, I broke it down kind of month by month just to give people a more of a detailed idea of monthly cost, solar credit cost, monthly payments, and total lease payments. So I hope I provide enough information to make sense of all that and show you that this year we saved about $54,500 on electricity here. Yeah, it is good. Yeah. It'd be great if we could do something similar at the elementary schools. I don't know, in the middle school, I don't know what opportunities and what the lease cost would be in the future. I just can only assume those costs have went up slightly. It's my understanding that the NEB rate might stay in the 20 cent range. It dipped down there a little bit last year, and as you can see in 2023, we did really good. We had almost $100,000 worth of savings in year 23. So it seems like a good program worth looking into elsewhere, for sure. So, any questions on that?
All right, I'm gonna back up with the question I had, sorry. So you walked us through the staffing levels of the department, and
Yep.
we approved the new mechanic, like HVAC or systems mechanic kind of position going forward. And then in the survey, and the discussion that, the hope was that would impact service contracts and some things potentially, but not knowing how we can realize those and when we will. Can you
Yes.
just speak to kind of any assumptions you made and what that looks like? And if you captured what you think we had and maybe things would have gone up more for 26 than than you're showing here without that, or just help understand the benefit we're getting from it?
Yeah, so I didn't go into extreme detail on that. I will say that we reallocated funding within the budget so there's to be able to pay for that. So that wasn't a significant increase within our employee costs for the department.
Yeah.
So we were able to reallocate funding within the department, not to have an increase in FTEs, if that makes sense.
Yep. And so then this, the service maintenance contracts number, would it be fair to say that that's potentially overstated from where it could come in? Or you didn't back any potential savings out yet? Am I making sense with that?
Yeah, you are making sense of that. So let me take a look at that one, just so
Yeah, that one.
yeah, this one here.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that, I think the reality is the increase here might have been a little bit greater if we didn't reallocate those funds. We would have seen probably a larger increase from that 25 to the proposed 26 here. Yeah. I believe I reallocated about 40,000 from contract services towards the new position, as well as some unfilled custodial staffing positions. So this would probably be increased by roughly around 30,000.
Yeah, I remember you found most of that, didn't
That's
find
right.
it, but you were able to reallocate most of those funds, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. Yep. Yep. And that's a general overview of our budget for this year, of the kind of major increases I touched on, and if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to talk through them.
All right, thank you, Sean. I think we're good. Thanks a lot. And with that, we will move on to transportation. And I'm not introducing, I'm not sure just who was going to present. Is Evan going to present, or Tom, or both of you guys a little bit?
So I'll be doing the first part of it, and then
Okay.
Evan's going to do the last part with the electric bus.
Great.
Okay, so we have our fiscal year 2026 financial committee presentation for the 2026 school year. Want to hit the next slide. Breaking down what our department has. We have personnel, we have 48. We have 31 bus drivers, 12 van drivers, 2 mechanics, and 3 office staff, which includes myself. Vehicles, we have 47. We have 30 regular buses, 2 wheelchair buses, 4 minibuses, 10 vans, and a plow truck with a sander. As far as anything else for equipment, we have a snow removal machine that was purchased last year, and we've been using it. And it does work very well.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
Jump right over there. Okay, so our proposed budget for 2026 is $1,494,450. The 2025 budget was $1,340,557. So our difference is $224,893, an 11.48% increase. Items that were purchased last year that we're not looking at again this year would be we got a new sander for the plow truck, new lighting in the garage, and our new snow removal system. As far as notable increases, we're looking to replace 4 buses this year. We have, all 4 of them would be over 10 years old and over 125,000 miles. If we choose to do one of the 4 buses as an electric bus, it would increase by 110,000. We'll get into that more with Evan breaks down what the electric bus can save us later on, but this is just up front. Another increase is for summer drivers. We spent 77,000 last year. That was not a line item, so we put it in for this year for 75,000. That could change if programs change going into the summer, but we figured we spent it last year, we might as well have it in the budget, so it's spoken for. The next item is the cost of tires is going up. We're planning for an $8,000 increase there. Basically, the price of rubber is increased, and we're not using more tires, they're just more costly to replace. And the last item is if we're looking at replacing the Traversa system, which is our, as far as doing the routing and also tracking the buses, replacing Traversa with Busrite would cause us to have a $32,000 increase, as it's $1,000 per vehicle to put it into the system for our 46 vehicles. Yes.
And so is that a 1-year big increase for the Traversa because it's the installation?
That's correct. That would be the first year.
Thank you.
Also, if you're wondering why it doesn't say $46,000 increase, it's because our Traversa contract is $14,000 per year. So that's where the savings nets out. Not savings, but the difference.
And that was loud again, sorry. For next year, what's the maintenance fee on that look like, or
I believe it's roughly the same. They were coming in around 16, I believe they were talking
okay.
about.
So no substantial difference in the
Not a
yearly.
substantial. Where the biggest savings, so I am still researching this a little bit more. The last meeting that I did have with somebody from Busrite, if you wanted to upgrade Traversa to do what Busrite does, it's more costly. So Busrite's cheaper if you want to add in all the different functions, such as tracking the students on the buses. Parents can go, because actually Katie in the office has it, because her son goes to school in Bath and they just started it. She can track where her son is on the bus. So those are things that are added into it, and it's a matter of whether you want to go that route. Thank you.
Just a couple questions. The 224,000 difference, does that include the electric bus or no?
No, that would be without it. It would be an additional 110,000 if we went with an electric bus.
Okay. And then the 77,000 for the summer drivers that we had to come up with that wasn't budgeted, you know where that came from?
I don't know where that came from last year because it wasn't part of when that was spent.
Yeah, I think we just tried to reallocate some funds. This was something that was discovered in the budgeting process, probably early December. We were able to pay for the summer drivers with additional salary lines that we had. And I think we still have enough open positions right now that it'll net out throughout the year. But we did want to put some money to that line for the next coming year.
Was that within the transportation budget or the whole?
Correct. It was in the
This-
transportation budget. By object code, it gets assigned to the transportation
Okay,
side of the budgeting.
thanks.
Yep.
Notable decreases would be contracted services. We've tracked for the last 3 or 4 years. We noticed that we've been consistently underspending that line item. So we did project for a $20,000 decrease. Under capitalized equipment, a $19,000 decrease due to we don't have any big items that we're looking, such as the snow removal equipment that we bought last year that's purchased. It's in action now, so we don't need to do it again. And the last item would be out-of-district transportation. We're going to decrease that line item by $33,000. We utilize RideSource Incorporated to transport special ed out-of-district placements. We've only had to do that with one student. Several years ago, they had some issues when they were really short drivers. They did have to do it more often, but it doesn't look like that's an issue right now, so we felt it suitable to reduce that line item. far as the bus replacement we talked about, the 4 buses that would be replaced are the following: 13-1, 14-2, 14-3, 14-4. We number the buses based on the years that they come in. So basically, you're looking at when they would go out, the first one would be 12 years old, and the other 3 would be 11 years old. These are 4 diesel buses, so we'd be replacing those, getting them off the road, which is great. At that point, it would leave us with 4 buses in the fleet that are diesel. 2 of them would be spares, so they wouldn't be on the road all the time.
Just, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I've heard other reports, board meetings and such, but I can't remember. How many buses roughly a year do we look at replacing? Is it around 4 or is it?
Yeah, so
higher this
they
year?
did 4 last year, right? I know it fluctuated a little bit over the years, but 4 seems to be right around where they've been going based on the size of the fleet and trying to keep it around the 10-year mark.
Okay, and I think I understand that these are 4 diesels. They're going to go away. We'll have 4 diesels remaining. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
The 2 wheelchair bus and the 2 of the spares would be.
And are they any cheaper or more expensive to run? Because we'll have more in the gas department.
No, they're about the same basically right now because their usage is down. We're not using them that often. So basically, as a spare, they go in when one of the other buses go out for service.
Thank you.
I was just going to share a chuckle I just had because I followed bus 14-4 into this meeting this evening, running the late run to Harpswell, and
Yes.
thought to myself, I wonder what year that was. It did look rough and old, but it did look like it was a little older. So
It is definitely an older bus. Thankfully, it actually is a very reliable bus. That out of the 314s, that's the one we use to replace right away.
reliable and a well-driven bus, I'll add, if whoever's driving something.
I was just gonna, to fill Jessica in. There were a few years where we didn't replace 3 or 4 buses, and then one year in not too recent past, we had to get 10 at once. So the decision was made, yeah, let's keep doing 3 or 4 a year as long as we can. Like that seems to be the pace where they age out and they need to be replaced without getting us into a hole.
Bit more 10 a year. Sounds good.
All right, and then in terms of the electric bus, so despite a higher upfront cost for the vehicle purchasing, which estimated around $389,000, and charger installation, an electric bus could save the district about $151,000 or more over the course of 15 years. This would be possible this investment could be made possible by the $200,000 award that we received from the EPA, which we have an extension through 2026 to utilize. Just some basic numbers here, just to compare, gasoline buses can run about 10 years or so with 125,000 miles is kind of the suggested timeline for replacement for gasoline buses. Whereas because electric buses have a little less moving parts, less fluids to change, less situations, you can run those for 15 years or 150,000 miles. We'll say that Tom and I are also going to a training on the 19th in Biddeford, where the Dayton School, which is the town next to Biddeford, just implemented a full fleet of electric buses. So we'll be attending that and learning kind of the whole process from that staff, which is pretty exciting. This is a quick breakdown of just the kind of apples to apples costs for both gasoline and electric. So with an electric bus, you do have that one-time charger install. I priced that out to be just shy of $10,000, and half of that is to pay for the electrician, and the other half would be to pay for the actual charger itself. Because we're doing one bus, we'd be putting in a phase 2 charger. If we would want to extend the fleet or expand the fleet in the future, we'd want to probably upgrade to a phase 3, and that would require us to change the power source coming into the transportation garage if that were something that we want to explore. The annual cost of energy, as you saw with Sean's presentation, we do lock in our electricity rates, so that is a favorable advantage that we have. When I did this calculation, I estimated about 17 cents per kilowatt hour for a total annual energy cost of about $4,000. But if you use the 11 cents for the kilowatt hour, that number significantly drops for the electricity cost. And your annual maintenance is significantly cheaper too. I've been speaking with other school districts who are utilizing electric buses, and they're saying that they're really not replacing anything except for windshield wiper fluids. All their batteries are under warranty for 8 years. And really it's just the cost of tires, which to me are comparable, which is why they're not included on this slide. And really there's not much maintenance involved. One really great thing is that if we purchased a Bluebird, which is what the majority of our fleet is, their sales staff will come and train the mechanics on how to work on the buses or how to identify problems free of charge, which is pretty awesome. And if there was a major outlying issue with any of the electric buses, we could send it to O'Connor, who's our current vendor with all of our bus needs outside of what the garage can do, and they're right up in Augusta, so we wouldn't have to fly in a mechanic from Canada, which has been the case with the Lion buses. So I think going with a Bluebird, which would supplement our fleet nicely, would be the strategy for us to pursue. There are some unknowns that I hope to have answered at this training that we're attending on the 19th. What other grants and funding can we access? That's obviously if we can get this whole entire project paid for and lower the burden on the taxpayer, that's front of mind. And then would there be any additional service contracts? That is something that I did push the Bluebird sales staff on, and they said that they don't recommend any additional warranties, any service contracts. They really believe that in the first 5 years, you won't have to do any kind of maintenance besides your normal tires, windshield wiper fluids, wiper blades, and maybe you have to replace the seat if it gets some vandalism or whatever. But other than that, they really said 5 years should be smooth sailing. And that's all I have for the electric bus portion. I guess we could open it up to any additional questions at this point.
For Evan or Tom, I'm not sure. Just curious if when we retire buses now, like for example, the list that you gave, 14.4 and such, how many miles are on those buses?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but each of them is over that 125,000 that they expected lifespan. So they're in that range where it's 10 years and 125,000 miles, and then each of those has hit it.
Okay, so they're roughly, they're hitting the year and the mileage around the same time. So
That is correct.
The next piece of that was for the electric bus. We're getting 5 years, but only 25,000 more miles, if I'm reading that correctly. So I also think I remember we're planning to use that if it was approved around Topsom. So that would potentially keep the mileage lower.
That is correct, because
Okay.
the range is anywhere from 120 to 150 on a charge. The routes that go out to Harpswell in a day when they do their 2 runs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, those 2 runs are around 145 to 150 miles. So we couldn't use it there. So you would be using it on lower runs, so it would space that out longer.
So we might expect that we would make it to the 15-year window.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Back to some of the numbers that we looked at here. Is it safe to assume that the difference in what we looked at for new and savings and the new costs, the numbers that are left over are primarily payroll and salary and benefits?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, basically it figures in the raises that were done through the contracts and everything. That's all already in there.
Yep. And then we're assuming fuel prices remaining relatively neutral.
I think when I did the analysis, I put a 3% increase just to follow the CPI. It might have been 3.1, whatever the CPI was back in December when I put this together.
Do you know off the top of your head, like what our fuel cost is?
We budget $330,000 for fuel.
Okay.
That's at least for this coming fiscal year.
Yep.
And I think we did, like I said, 3% less than that
Okay.
for fiscal year 25.
Okay. And one other question that I have is, and it came up when you mentioned the thought came up to me when you mentioned the Traversa system. Do we have anything that monitors how drivers, I guess, drive, for the lack of another way to put it, how much fuel they consume, or things like if drivers are more efficient drivers than others, or things like that? Do we have any ways to see that and encourage?
There's no
Better fuel use?
system, there's no system that monitors that. I mean, the only thing we can see, like currently with our camera systems, we can see what, like the speed of the bus when we look at a camera driving. But there's no tracking of fuel, how much, how many miles per gallon it's averaging. There's no system that's
Okay.
tracking that, but we could actually pull based on what the bus uses. You could go in and manually figure it out.
Okay, it would be, okay, a little labor intensive though, not something that's easy to pull and say, oh, look, we could
Yeah,
probably
there's nothing
drive
tracking it right
differently
now.
and do anything. Okay, that was the other thought I had when I was following the bus on my way in. So thank you for indulging me.
Absolutely. So yeah, any other questions that we can answer at this point?
All right, thank you both. And next up maybe is Evan with the revenue and debt service.
All right. So this is a discussion about our fiscal year 2026 budget in regard to the debt and revenue. We did receive our ED 279, which is the paperwork that the state provides to inform us on how we're doing, or to inform us on what our contribution from the state will be for the coming years. But first, I want to talk about our debt service costs. So like paying a mortgage or a car loan, schools also make payments on large investments like buildings and major repairs. We have 3 bonds currently. We have the high school bond, the Mountain Ararat bond that we are currently underway with. On the right here, I just wanted to highlight how we receive our debt schedule from the main municipal bond bank. So for fiscal year 2026, on the high school, we'll pay just shy of $3 million in principal, and then in interest, we'll pay 2 payments. One of them will be in November, one of them will be in May, and those will equal out $1,274,296. Unlike a mortgage where you have a locked-in principal and interest over the course of your loan, these municipal bonds, the interest payment goes down as you start to pay off the principal, which is really great for us because we are seeing a $58,000 decrease in our high school bond interest for next fiscal year. So a total savings on our debt service from fiscal year 2025 to 2026 will be $91,000. Also, because this is revenue and debt service, it could be a little bit tricky. I welcome any questions at any time. I don't think we need to wait till the end. So if anyone has anything, feel free to jump in. So the state subsidy numbers, as I said, were released on January 27th, 2025. In comparison from the school fiscal year of 2025, there were some notable things. So first is that our enrollment district-wide was down by 40.5 students. So that was primarily, well, it was in the K through 8, which was down by 51.5 students. But interestingly enough, we saw an increase in the high school student population by 11 students. The EPS numbers are driven by enrollment figures. So if we are seeing a reduction in enrollment, we're likely to see a reduction or maybe a flat funding of state contribution. But despite a reduction in district-wide enrollment, the state contributed an increase of $204,000, and that was primarily because of special education. So our state contribution for fiscal year 2026 will be $21,050,056, which, as I said, is a 1% increase of $204,000. So this is a chart that shows the just kind of computation of how the state does their enrollment calculations. So the state calculates enrollments based on the average of the last 2 school years, and they take that data from October 1st. So they use 2023 and 2024 October 1st data to come up with what our district-wide pupils will be, and they use set cost per pupil education rates throughout the state. They set that number, and then they multiply the enrollments by the per pupil spending, and then they give you a figure. Before taking out adjustments, our EPS figure was 22,866,000. There are things that they take out of that number. So that's why if you see 22 million at the bottom there, it looks different from what I had stated previously of 21 million. It's because they do subtract for certain things. In terms of how this number gets, or how we determine what the local shares of property taxes will be for our 4 towns, the process takes into account the valuation of property. So for our 4 towns of Bowdoin, Bowdenham, Harpswell, and Topsham, the state evaluates the values of the properties. And then as a district, we look at enrollments in those towns, and we do an average between the valuation of the property and the percentage of students to come up with a proposed allocation of how we're going to break out the funding for the remainder portion of the budget. This is data that is provided through the Department of Education. And like I said, it's based on a 50-50 split between property and enrollment. And every year, everything gets rebalanced between the population and the valuations. Any questions here? So for the proposed allocation for this coming school year, 2026, Bowdoin would be 13.72, Bowdenham 13.44, Harpswell would be at 34.27, and Topsham, at 38.57.
This is a state formula, as in all schools use the same formula. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The way that we break things out within this district here is not a state formula. This is how I think the district's been doing it probably, I'm not sure how long, but that's my understanding that that's how it has been broken up.
Yeah, we looked it up last year, and it's been since the beginning of the district.
So
This
that is to say, the state's EPS calculation says MSAD 75 gets X dollars.
Right.
Our system for dividing that up between the 4 towns is our own, and has
Okay.
been, which is 50% enrollment, 50% property value, and has been the case for the entire life of the district.
That's what I was asking. Thank you.
Thanks for explaining that better. Any other questions here before I?
Right, so the 21 million, that's purely the state's formula.
Yes.
So I just going to take a moment to point out a couple things for the committee, at least. I'm sure you're all over this on your end. But so the state's EPS cost of our school was calculated to be just under a 2% increase. Of that 2% increase, the state is absorbing a 1% increase and sticking the local share with an almost 3% increase. And that's just based on the EPS numbers, right? Because so they basically, the 55-45 split They are less than that this year relative to their last year. So the state went up less than the total, so the local share had to go up more than the total. So it's a 2%, just under 2% total EPS increase, which the local share is going up by 3%, and the EPS, the state contribution goes up by 1%, just for EPS, before we get into all our other fun stuff. So that's a bummer.
That is a bummer. Okay, the next slide, this one is not as fun to talk about, but essentially if we use our maintenance of effort budget, which is 57,984,425, that's with the adult education payment as well of 175K included in that number. We take away the state subsidy of 21 million, and then this other revenue, which I've calculated to be 2.6 million, which I'll get into in the next slide. The amount to be locally funded is a total of $34,318,864, and it's broken out by town here on this top row in bold. The amount below that is the amount that we funded, that we raised last year through the towns, and then the increase is the second number in bold below that, and then the percentage increase is listed below that for a total district-wide percentage increase of 8.8%. The percentages for the sharing between 2025 and 2026 are pretty much unchanged, besides a few decimal places. Any questions here before I continue? This is a little bit of detail on our revenue. So the state contribution is at the top here. The local share, $34 million, is highlighting in green. That is the second section down here that I can talk about shortly. Other revenues I am expecting to come in to be about $50,000. That's where they've been for the past couple of years. And that's everything from gate receipts, various building use fees, and then miscellaneous incomes. That can be donations or any small grants. But the detail to local share, which is this number highlighted in green, which totals $34 million, which is the amount that needs to be fundraised. The state does require locally a certain amount of money to be fundraised by the town in order to receive the full state contribution, and that number that they set aside was $17 million, just shy of $18 million. They also give us they also provide recommendations on what we need to fundraise for debt service, and then the $175,000 for adult ed is in there, as well as the additional local contribution, which makes up the difference between the local share total and the rest of those revenue pieces. And that all totals $34 million. Any questions here?
I like this table. I mean, I don't like what the numbers look like, but this is a useful way to break it down.
Thank you. This is something that I worked really hard with Mark Conrad on all last week, so we put this together, and I'm happy to have his mentoring abilities if he's listening. I hope he is. Yes.
One more question. The fund balance carryover,
Yes.
how did you calculate that?
Fund balance carryover. So for fund balance, we used, I'll go to the next slide.
All right. I shouldn't
Fund
have
balance
asked.
carryover.
I should have let you just keep going.
Yes. So the fund balance carryover, if you can see my mouse here, I don't know if you can. What we actually put in the fund balance was $2,565,000. And then the other revenue of $50,000 is considered to be an additional number that goes into the fund balance. So that brings it up to $2,615,000. But that's how I assumed the fund balance carryover number. So fund balance for everyone here. I think of it kind of as like it's like the general operating fund money pot that the district uses to run its day-to-day operations. For this current fiscal year that we're in right now, excuse me, we had a school budget of $54 million, 849. And the state does require that we keep 5% of that budget in our fund balance at all time, which equates to $2.7 million. So this means that the district must set aside $2.7 million in its funds for emergencies and for anything that may come up along the way. That is the second number here on the line, $2.7 million. The unaudited number is what I'm carrying over from fiscal year 2023. We should have a better idea of what that number is come March 31st when our audit is expected to be delivered to us. And that means essentially that at the end of fiscal year 2023, the district had $9 million in its general fund. It's like a leftover savings, and we can use it to allocate money to future fund balances, which we did for the 2024-2025 year at $2.565 million. We also assigned $485,000 to various capital reserve accounts, including athletic fields, capital maintenance, and that comes directly out of the fund balance as well, which draws the total down to an unassigned fund balance of $5.9 million. Any questions here before I continue? So from the $5.9 million, which is left over, we subtract the required 5% out, which is the first or the second number I talked about, the $2.7 million. And then that gives us a remaining fund balance of $3.248 million that we can use to project over the next 3 years of how we want to use that money. So I have put a few placeholders in here. I'm assuming that we'll have a surplus of about $1.75 million at the end of this fiscal year, and that's because of unfilled positions. And then I've also assumed that we will transfer the same amount to capital reserves this fiscal year. We can obviously play with these numbers and change them, but that would leave us with an available fund balance for future years of $4.5 million. If we use the same funding amount of same fund balance amount of $2.56 million over the next 2 years, the 2 years following, we'd have money that we'd have to spend down in the eyes of the state. This is a bit of a moving number because at the end of each fiscal year, you'll have a various carryover that'll influence your fund balance. At this point, really what's driving the leftover surpluses in our budget would be unfilled positions, or that's pretty much it. And coming out of COVID, that was, my understanding is pre-COVID, there wasn't a lot of surpluses because positions were pretty stable and there wasn't a lot of turnover. But in this post-pandemic era, it's a little bit more normal to have these surpluses as positions go unfilled. Any questions? That does wrap up my debt and revenue piece.
I would just add that I know there's work at the legislative level to pass new legislation maintaining the 9% limit, but that has not been to the committee yet. It has not passed, so we're all assuming the 5%, right?
That's correct.
Great.
I think the 5% is already passed in last year's legislative session, so
Right.
that's what I used as a placeholder for going forward too.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a quick question that I'm going to stumble my way through, so feel free to correct me at any point here. So last year fund balance allocation that we contributed to the general budget? Did we have a number that we spent towards the general budget number? It was like 1.8 or something. I don't know if I'm accurate or not, but I'm
Sounds
trying to go with what's in my head.
We did use it.
To help
Pay
in
for
effect
budget.
pay down the just
for
the
this year.
budget,
Put
right?
it towards this
Yeah.
year.
And so where I'm curious about is how does that number roll into now this new budget? Does that contribute to the, like us spending that last year, did that just kind of push that growth or that increase down the line a year? And so while it helped us improve our total increase last year, now we end up paying for it? Did I walk myself through the question there? If the money that we put to the budget last year that came from the general fund or the fund balance, excuse me, yes, that number helped in effect buy down our total budget number last year, but now it rears its ugly head this year.
If
kind
we
of.
don't maintain
be-
that level, it would be the de facto budget increase.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. That's what I was.
That's
trying to
my
walk
understanding at
head
least.
through
I
it.
mean,
That's correct. Yeah, you explained that well.
Yep.
And I'm keeping placeholders in here as using the same amount of fund balance and the same amount of transfers to capital reserves as last year, just because we don't have that audit information available to us about where our fund balance actually is at the end of 2023. So I think that's a conservative way to not say, hey, let's use 3 million fund balance to pull down our local contribution number. I think that we just need to use placeholders of the same information from last year just to make sure that we
Definitely. Yeah, yeah.
aren't getting
Yeah.
too over the front of our skis, to use
Yeah.
a nice wintry term.
But then even just like allocations on here of like the fiscal year 27 or 28, those additional amounts.
That's what
would
the
in
state
effect
likes. Yeah, that's,
defer those numbers for 29, where it would, or each year we're building upon it.
yeah, and the state likes to see a spend down plan, so that's why I included it in here. They don't hold you to these numbers, so next year, or fiscal year 2027, we don't have to use a fund balance of 1.4 million. They just want to know that you have a plan in place to start spending down that money. We are not held to this whatsoever. It's just, that's the guidance I'd like to see.
So I think that for me, the gist of my question and talking out loud or thinking out loud maybe was that as we look to figure out how to spend this money, spending it on things that have known future significant costs but aren't ongoing costs is a great place so that we can eliminate those costs from future budgets, but then also don't, we do the hard work now to deal with what's in front of us right now as well, versus just deferring it.
Yeah, and I would say the two big things that come just top of mind would be capital maintenance would be a huge one. We talk about those kind of expenditures a lot, as well as I know money's been continually set aside for the athletic field as well, the turf field. Those are just the two big ones that came to mind.
So in like simplified terms, let's assume MOE next year, let's just start with the 57 million and assume MOE is 0. Somehow next year it's also 57 million. And so we would continue everything, but we could then also have 1.4 million to build new roofs.
Or the way to look at it would be, instead of putting 2.56 towards lowering the local share, you'd use 1.4 to lower the local share. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, try to explain that differently.
He's thinking of putting it somewhere else.
I think that the better way to put it is that the gradual decrease means that the district needs to think about relying on the fund balance less and may shift the financial responsibility more onto the towns in the future.
But it's also possible that our fund balance just stays steady.
Correct.
Right. Just so you can know the use of the fund balance when you go into our budget presentations from last year that we presented to the towns. From 21, we added 1.1 million in 21, which was a 175% increase. 1.4 million the year after, 23 was 1.7, and then 24 was 1.7. and the fund balance. And I think last year we went up to 2.75. Remember, I think we added an extra million in the fund balance to the budget.
And like even looking at this, right, like the potential of 1.7 might be a logical place to look because that's what we're rolling forward just from this year without digging a bit further. But Jessica, yeah.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to word this.
You do better than I did, so just.
I doubt
have
it.
that.
So, and also taking into consideration what you just said, Heidi. Okay, Evan, I'm trying to simplify this in my head, but it's not simple. If we're going to find out at the end of March what the fund balance is, if the audit gets done, I know we've had trouble having that done recently, so, but let's say that happens. That is prior to our budget being finalized.
That's correct.
So why, pardon the ignorance, but why wouldn't we just take that money off the top of our budget? Because it's a fund balance. It's already been allocated. So wouldn't we say if it's 1.7 million, we don't need that 1.7 million in next year's budget?
I tried to use for this year the fund balance that we put together for the fund balance we used last year. I carried it over into this year as the
Okay.
same fund balance amount in order to show a representation of how that would affect the taxpayers. So I've already considered adding the fund balance into all the calculations of the maintenance of effort budget minus the state budget or the state allocated money minus the fund balance from last year, which is the same amount as a placeholder. And then that rest of the money that was left over that needs to make up the difference in the budget is what the taxpayers would have to.
So he did do that.
Yes.
Okay. That's the
That's what this is.
2.5 million is basically unspent from last year,
Okay.
putting towards the 57 million. That's an estimate of what we might choose to do.
Okay.
And if we do that, then the state or the local share is 34 million.
Sorry?
The local share.
To reduce the tax.
Yes, that's,
Yeah.
that would be my goal
So-
too. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out.
21,
balance, why
The
wouldn't we
top
do it?
line up there, 21, isn't going to change.
Well,
Right. That-
and I think part of what you're asking is if we have a surplus of 1.7, what are those budget lines that led to the surplus? Right? And so I think that is reflected in these presentations, like, oh, here's a position we didn't fill,
Right.
we're eliminating, right? So that isn't called out as specifically that 1.7 lump,
Right.
but
Right. but
it's all in
but it's
there.
been approved and we didn't use it.
Correct.
And so therefore, we would potentially use it, or we are going to use it if somebody can.
We're going to
Because
use some amount.
We're going to use whatever's there?
Mm,
No.
We
Okay.
have it we're required to keep essentially a cushion.
5%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, so anything that we have, and jump in if I'm getting this wrong. Anything, let's say we have 9%, and we're required to save 5%, then we have the 4%. We get to decide, spend it all this year. The state says we have to have a plan for how we're going to spend it over 3 years.
Okay.
So we might want to spend it gradually so our budget doesn't do this.
Right. Okay.
And part of that too, I think, is if we were to take it all this year, then next year that comes due. And so in part of what my thinking is like looking at ways that we can almost invest it in the future to eliminate future costs without just delaying the increase, which I don't think I said that very well. But I'm gonna let Hudson speak, because I think the way I was talking through that, I think probably confused it more, but
Yeah, I mean, the idea being like, put it against the woodside roof replacement or
It's
whatever.
sort of an earmark.
yeah.
So I understand the 5% piece. We have to have this 5% of the budget, any fiscal year budget, right? Whatever.
The
fiscal-
previous one.
We have to
yeah.
have that on hand. That's the state requirement to have that cushion.
Yeah.
So we request our budget, and if the books are even, then we have to take 5% of that budget that we need, all of it, and put it away. Is that right? If we don't have. a
If we
fund
didn't have
balance?
surplus funds.
If we didn't have a fund balance, then.
Great question, I don't know.
Well, I'm sort of working this out real time, so this might be wrong, but the 5% slush is, I mean, call it slush, it's not really slush, is in the 57 million. And it just gets carried and carried forward. It's essentially a line
Yep,
of the budget.
exactly, yeah. It's essentially a line that you really can't touch. And it's whatever's left over after that is what we try to figure out how to allocate towards this year, next year, and the year after.
And if you didn't have it, you would have to include that in the budget itself, in the
You'd have-
work that you're doing.
That's right.
Exactly, you'd
You'd
have to replenish it.
Yeah, so the other thing I just wanted to point out, so like thinking about the 3-year plan to draw down the balance to 5% from 9, right? So like that fiscal year 27 in this hypothetical plan, that 1.165 decrease in fund balance is in essence a 2% increase to the local contribution. Like that's 2% of the MOE, right?
Yeah,
So like-
that's the point I
so-
keep saying. Yeah,
So
so-
drawing, which again, we should draw it down, but that absent, savings in similar numbers, it's an increase. It's an increase to the local share of about 2%, in that 1 year at least.
Well, assuming that we spent everything else.
Yeah, and then again, that's a hypothetical drawdown, that's for next year's budget, but if with the MOE, if we did draw it down, there'd be a 2%, increase, assuming all other things are equal, which they won't be, but.
Right.
So it definitely encourages strong financial management and, trying to just create as much of a surplus as possible while being reasonable, obviously, you don't want to,
You don't want to ask for more than you need.
right, and you don't want to be miserly and tell people they can't have their supplies, but
It's a science and an art.
exactly. Any other questions here?
We did a pretty good transition into the next line item, which was to discuss previous presentations, but was there anything, if we take a quick minute to just think back on any previous presentations, thoughts you want to share, questions you may have to offer up that we might need to take away to get answers, but. All right, I'm seeing none, so now I'm trying to find what we had next. All right. Thank you. Warrant adjust, yeah, Evan, do you want to walk through what you put together for that we were hoping to be able to approve tonight to then take to the board to vote on?
Yes, I'll start with fiscal year 2024, which is warrant article 14. Wait for it to pop up there. Put together a purpose statement. Purpose is to correct the incorrect interest figure listed in warrant article 14 and provide the accurate total for debt service payments. Just to circle back again, this is something that the state had flagged while we were submitting our reports. They were clerical typing errors, but they wanted to see them corrected just so that everything was clean. So my proposed amendment text was the incorrect interest figure was listed in warrant article 14 is hereby corrected to reflect the accurate interest payment of $162,000. The revised total, including the principal payment, is $505,000. And the correct warrant article reads as following. To see if the district will raise an appropriate $505.91.61 for the annual payments on debt service previously approved by district voters for non-state funded school construction projects or non-state funded portions of school construction projects, in addition to the funds appropriated as the local share of the school administrative unit's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12. This, like I said, was listed correctly as something the voters voted on. It's just that the interest payment was listed incorrectly. So that is how it was presented in the warrant articles. What I did, I printed this sheet out and then updated all of the 14 board members' names. And it is my understanding that as long as everything just gets signed, we could submit the amendment to the state as so. And it'll be uploaded into their system and everything will be corrected.
Would we need to vote to approve these revised warrant articles prior to signing?
Well, that's what.
I think
Yeah,
that's-
just double check. I'm just asking
Yeah.
for clarity, not
I
to.
mean, that's what-
The intent was to bring it Thursday if
Yeah.
we meet Thursday to the.
And then
full
we'd all
board.
just sign them like we
Yep.
would the normal budget. warrant.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean,
Great.
essentially, we're not changing anything in reality. It's a.
It's,
We're cleaning the
paperwork-
paper trail.
It's
Yeah.
cleaning the paper trail. It's just correcting the typos that were
Yeah.
Yeah.
in
Great.
the articles.
So we'll have two motions then next week, Thursday, I presume, one for the one and one for the other, and then we'll just.
That's
sign
how
them.
they're on the agenda, I believe.
I believe so
Yeah.
too.
And you already asked them the state, what format they wanted this.
They said
to be.
submit an amendment.
Okay,
They left it pretty open, honestly, and this was the recommendation that I gathered from Mark Conrad.
I mean, this should explain to them what's happening.
And then I'll move over to fiscal year 25 correction. Okay, so this one stems from the Orion being included in the food service portion of the warrant articles, which is warrant article 18 for fiscal year 2025. Purpose is to correct the appropriation amount in warrant article number 18 for food service and remove the $20,000 allocation for the Orion Performing Arts Center as it is unrelated to the food service program and outside the scope of the warrant article. This does not mean we're removing $20,000 from the budget or from the Orion. It simply means that in warrant article 18, which has its own scope of what goes in it, is removing the Orion from it. The appropriation figure listed in warrant article 18 shall be amended to $200,000. The revised total excludes $200,000 or $20,000 allocated to the Orion and does not fall within the jurisdiction of that article. The corrected warrant article 18 is to see if the district will raise and appropriate $200,000 in additional local funds in support of the food service program for the year July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2025. And I did the same thing with the corrected, this is the proposed amendment, and then I have a corrected sheet with all of the school board members on it. And then in addition, one thing that they flagged for us was that our summary page didn't have the correct order listed. So I did correct that as well. And that will, excuse me here, just trying to pull that up. This only had 25 articles, but the town and the school board put together 26 articles, so I added in a Region 10 unanticipated revenues line, which was part of what the town voted on. So this was just corrected to show, to have the correct warrant articles match up to the correct things that were voted on. This is the summary sheet that will get submitted as well.
I think the only question I had was back on the previous slide we were looking at, that was the summary of the $20,000 from the Orion. Is that was, everything you had there spoke to warrant 18. Where did that, I know we talked about this last time and I'm late in the night or something, I don't know, but where'd that 20,000 lived?
In
Which warrant?
warrant article 12,
And that 20,000 was there already?
correct? Yep.
Okay, so that's it, just in reading this, I don't know if we think we should have that included in here in any way or not, or just as I'm reading this, somebody, do we need to say where that's going, or the fact that it already was somewhere? Or, I don't know, that may be,
Well, so this correction is for the state's paperwork,
Correct.
is that right?
And probably our own internal documentation too,
So
probably
my
when we
guess
did our
is the
audit.
state doesn't care where the Orion money is.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we care? And we may, like, again, we may not, but just when I read this,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this $20,000 doesn't belong there, it belongs elsewhere, but we don't really say where elsewhere is. And is there a benefit to just noting that here?
I believe.
It was
so.
included in warrant 12 or
like a
whatever
footnote.
originally, and the
Essentially.
number is correct?
Yeah, I think that's probably smart. So let me workshop that. I can send out a draft tomorrow and then if
Or
that
you can
works,
bring it, I'm comfortable with you bringing it to the board, I'm
Okay.
sure you'll do fine.
great. So if it works, just procedurally, like I said, I'll bring just the updated signature sheets, and then once those get all signed, I can submit it to the state.
It's a slightly different slate of people. Does that matter to them?
I don't think so. I did update it to be as of the 13th day of February 2025, because it was like May 10th last year. So I did update the date on it so that it would reflect that. And
That
then,
makes sense to me, if like,
The new,
who's here now is fixing it, so.
okay.
and I think it's just a majority thing. I think at least 8 people have to sign it. Which I hope 8 people will be here for Thursday,
Well,
unless
if
there's
not, we
no-
can't have a meeting.
Right.
I haven't heard.
All right, well,
Yeah.
thanks, Evan, for all the work on this and pulling this together, finding it and then pulling it together and correcting it like this.
Welcome. Thank you.
Now we'll know what you never have to do again, hopefully. I'm gonna say now you have to do it next time, but there won't be a next time.
There won't be. We're gonna go through everything very carefully to ensure no typos happen.
Excellent. All right, and the last item we had then this evening is public comment. It's seeing that there, oh.
No, it's not
You have
public.
something, it's not public comment, but we can hold on and you can go.
I was just gonna, yeah, just to emphasize just sort of where we stand right now, which is not the best. So I mean, as of right now, we're looking with the MOE only at an 8.8% increase to our local contributions. And every presentation we've gotten has an increase in it. So we're looking at a very tough. We will, so the superintendent's budget will be the summary. So like what she decides to bring to us. And so I guess what I'm saying is, Heidi, you have a very fun job. And I guess, I just offer, we're here if you want to bounce things around as you start developing your budget here. But just speaking for myself, this feels like a real uphill battle.
Uh,
An uphill battle.
I would quickly agree with that. Just quick, before the meeting this evening, Heidi and I spoke real briefly and about potentially if there's a benefit to all of us connecting again on what would be prior to our workshop on the 25th. We said our decision needed to be kind of by our district leadership meeting next week if we wanted to see if people, because I think we're meeting Tuesday. Heidi's feeling like she'll have a little bit more work done, and we'll see if it's worth the committee coming back together to help her flush it out, because we go through a 2 or 3 week stretch now, or even more, where we don't have committee meetings. And it just felt like that creating an opportunity for all of us to meet
Before
may be
the
beneficial before the select.
made-up workshop,
Yeah, to meet before that,
workshop makeup, I mean.
they're not made up, makeup, yes. So more to come on that, and we'll circulate it and see if we can make that work, or if it's better to go the following night or something.
And just to add to my comments, just to add to my comment for clarity, I think that every department head, every principal we've seen present has been a really responsible, student-focused budget, to be clear. I don't think I've seen anything where it's like, that's ridiculous. But, so I have full faith in what everyone's doing. I don't want that to sound like I was being critical. The budget numbers are a bummer. That's all.
Did you have a comment, Jessica?
Please, Hudson, you sound like you've the best handle on the EPS, the 2%, of the shares and if I'm requesting maybe, thinking that it would be good for our town managers, or town reps
Yeah.
to, if there was some sort of as brief as possible, as general understanding as possible, because I'm sitting here looking at it and I spend some level of hours trying to understand this, and it is still very difficult. So If that's something you could write up, or I don't know if you were.
Yeah,
already
I'll be
planning
happy.
on
I'll
it.
probably work with Ryan, but I will be happy if Ryan wants to work with him directly. I
I
always
just
like
feel
working
like we owe them as much understanding that we have, so that they can understand and they can answer to the taxpayers of their towns.
Yeah, no,
I was going to ask what exactly we're going to present on the March 5th. Is it essentially the MOE?
You meant using, sorry.
We will present the MOE and the things that Evan presented tonight, but yeah, yeah,
Basically what Evan. presented.
basically the same thing. Yeah.
All right.
and Ryan, have we, maybe Heidi, I don't know, have we invited our state reps and state senators to that meeting as well?
Yes,
Okay.
Becky included them on the invitation.
Excellent, thank you, guys.
No idea if they're coming.
Oh, well, again, we can do what we can do. And I just want to make sure we do that, that's all.
I feel like we talked about the EPS last year. Did we put something together last year?
We talked about it earlier this year.
Yeah, we did do that, but I feel like that maybe it just came up as a question and we talked it through.
I don't remember specifically.
We must have
It's a
just
good question.
answered a question about it, because I know and I don't know how many of them will be the same town reps, some of them have been around forever, and some of them might be new, and
Is that something that you do as chair? Invite the town folks?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not your job.
Okay.
Really Becky did it.
You what? Sorry.
Becky did it.
Okay.
With Heidi's name on it, so I
Yeah.
think Heidi's the official.
Heidi invited them via Becky.
She created the letters and sent them to each of the
Great.
towns.
Okay.
No.
So it's definitely, I think the more time we've had here to talk, probably another get together before that meeting will be beneficial for us to just talk more as a group. And if there's thoughts we can have between now and then that help us think of the best ways to make that as productive of an evening as we can too with the selectmen here would be great. So bring those thoughts to that next time. We are,
Probably
well,
on.
yeah, like what would people think of that? If it was 5 o'clock on the 25th, I believe, is that Tuesday? Or I don't know that, without looking at I don't know if there's anything the Monday before or the Wednesday after at 6, if those are better for people.
I think
I'm-
the only thing on
The 28th,
the
7th is
district
something, right?
calendar on Monday is I think the Region 10 meeting. But I don't think anyone here has a conflict with.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Okay, so that might be our second
Monday.
alternative, Monday at 6 if Monday, so either this would be the following Monday though, the 24th, Monday, the 24th,
Yeah.
or Tuesday, the 25th.
We don't like Wednesday, the 26th?
Could be.
Sorry. Okay.
Let's quickly,
Gotcha. Sorry, I wasn't trying to make things complicated.
what do people think of, is 5 too difficult for a 5 o'clock on Tuesday, the 25th?
I can definitely do that. That should be fine.
At 30, okay. Okay. Would people, are you okay being late? Would you sooner see if we can do Monday at 6? Okay. Well, you're part of the team here, so you get to say. How about Monday at 6? Does that work?
I have a possible conflict, but I don't know for sure today.
You don't know yet? Okay. We got a little time.
Just to know, that's 4 nights out that week for people.
Yeah, it's
That's true.
That's a lot.
That's true.
Strategic
Mm-hmm.
planning is, so we have board workshop is rescheduled, which will be on Zoom with Aurora, but we'll be in person. Then we have strategic planning. Some people are on that. And then we have board meeting on Thursday night,
Would
CIA.
Aurora's on Zoom, but is there a chance we could move that meeting to 6:30? And go, and we could go 5:30 to 6:30, or is that too difficult? If it is, that's,
2 hours. So
But
it would
could we go to
put-
8:30, I guess?
Would go to 8:30.
6:30 to 8:30 for the full board workshop, and then get a half. I know, I'm definitely rather have Monday night.
Do
Well,
we need a whole hour?
Probably not.
We might
All right,
maybe
let's
go
do this.
5:30 to 6?
Or
Oh, no, that would be on Tuesday.
on Tuesday. Let's plan on that for now.
Okay.
And we'll circulate anything we can before that to help people think. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Anything else before I make sure there's no public, which there still is not, so I think we're good for the evening. Thank you all. Have a good night.